In this video, we're going to be building a full SaaS web application from start to finish. Here's what it looks like. So you have this page here, which is kind of like an inbox messaging page. And these are all brand inbound sponsorship requests. So if you click on them, these are basically requests to me as a creator, whether I want to partner up with this brand. So you can get an overview of the messages here. You can create a brand report, which basically triggers a report on this brand and does some deep research to find out information about this brand. And this will give me information to figure out, is this a brand, a potential partner for me to do some sponsored videos about them. So this is what the front end looks like. We're going to be building a backend for this as well. We will be building the AI agent capability, so everything will work. This is like an actual working application. So let me just walk through the overview here. So the problem that we have is content creators receive dozens of sponsorship requests daily. So I experienced this firsthand as a creator. Once you start to build a bit of a following, then you just get so much inbound requests from all kinds of brands that want to partner up with you and that want to pay you to do some sponsored posts about them. And the problem is it takes a lot of time to read all of them and then figure out, okay, which brand is actually suitable for me, for my audience, like which brand has a match, which brand has a good product, which brand is like legit basically, and maybe also which brand like has enough funding to be able to pay me the rates that I request, right? And so a solution that I am thinking of here is essentially an AI-powered email agent. And this would be just the MVP version of that. I think there's like a lot that you can still build with that if you turn it into a true AI agent. But in this initial MVP version, all I want to build is kind of just an email agent that filters the incoming emails for brand sponsorship requests and then puts them in a nice view for you and gives you the ability to do some quick, deep research on them using AI. So here's the build that I am envisioning here. So the phase one of the build will be to build the Gmail integration and hook it up with an AI agent. And we will be building this part just with N8N. So I think using N8N for this part is actually the easiest solution right now. Like later on, it could be built more robust in code purely, but for the start, N8N is really good. So what this will do is we will have a Gmail integration that reads our emails on a recurring basis. And then it will have an AI agent attached to this, which reads the emails and filters out only the sponsorship requests. And then it will save the sponsorship requests to a Supabase so that we can, to a database basically, and we will use Supabase for that. This allows us then to access that data in phase two. So phase two, we will be building the UI. So that's the UI that I showed you just now, which is the interface for the user. And we will be building all of that in writing actual code for that. We're going to be using Claude Code to write the code. It will have an inbox view to have all of the sponsorship requests in one view. It will read from our Supabase table, and it will have the functionality to trigger research requests. Finally, we want to add the capability in phase three to actually do deep research on a brand. And for that, we will be using the Perplexity integration, the Perplexity API. We will be building an integration to the Perplexity API. And this will allow us to get deep research reports about brands to help us evaluate faster whether this brand is a fit for us. And if you're new here, my name is Moritz. I used to be a product manager with zero coding skills, and now I build AI applications full time. On this channel, I document my journey and teach beginners and non-technical people how to build and monetize products with AI. Let's start building. Okay, the first part of the build is the N8N agent. So let's start with that. We'll create a new workflow here and we'll just call it brand request agent. And okay, let's start with the first node. So the first one should obviously be a Gmail trigger, and we're gonna do it on, so you can do on message received, and yeah, we're gonna do on message received, because essentially what we want is that whenever messages come in, then a kind of evaluation should be done. And we should pass that through the AI agent to evaluate whether this is a brand sponsorship request. So we will be doing this for every message that comes into our Gmail. And yeah, we can select here. Let's set up the credential. So I'm going to do sign in with Google here. And I did set this up before. So I think it says, see the 6 service that N8N Cloud has some access to. When you set this up for the first time, there was something that you have to set up in Google, but if you get stuck, you can also just ask ChatGPT there. It was pretty straightforward as I remember. Okay, so it looks like account is already connected now. Let's see if it works. So Gmail account connected, and the polling time, so how many times it actually looks for messages, will be, let's do it every minute. And then event is message received. And we're not going to do simplify here. We're going to toggle that. And this basically returns a simplified version of the response instead of the raw data. So we're going to be doing this step manually. We'll get the data and then we will actually clean it up a bit to then pass it on. So what we should do here now is just do a fetch test event. And this fetches the first or the latest email in my inbox. So as you can see, it's delivered to moritzkamp@gmail.com, and it has all of these fields. It has this HTML field. It has here the subject field, from and to field. You can just scan through this and have a look. Okay, and it has a message ID here. And so the first thing is just like to get an overview of how this data here is structured. It has this text field here. This is probably the one that's going to be important for us. So what I actually want to do is I'll just go into my inbox and send myself like another test email that we can use as like a real, like kind of simulate a real sponsorship request, because we will be needing this later, right? So I'll just send it to myself, sponsorship request. Hey, we would really like to partner up with you. We are a huge brand and can pay you a lot. So let's send that. Just make sure it's the right email. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now if we do the fetch test event again, that's the one we got. Okay, perfect. And now we can actually pin this just to make sure that it doesn't get lost. Okay, the next step is we're going to be, as I said, cleaning this up, because the data that we got in is very unstructured, and we're just going to figure out which data we actually need. So we will do a step here, just like a code step, and we can see here the data that is coming in from Gmail. It has ID, a thread ID. So this thread ID is basically, if a reply is made to the email, it will have the same thread ID. So it's needed for keeping track of what is inside of one thread. What other information will we need? Probably the date, probably the message ID, subject, from, to, probably the text, and maybe also the HTML. Okay, so I went into ChatGPT here and basically I wrote this prompt. I'm building an N8N workflow, and this step helped me extract only the right fields and write the JavaScript for me to extract the right fields from this email. Let me also take a screenshot of this and paste that in here too, just to give it that context. And then I said output a structured JSON I need, and then I inputted all of the fields that I need from this email. ID, thread ID, message ID, subject, date, from email and from name, to email and to name, body and HTML body. So the goal is just to clean this up a bit and remove all of the fields that we don't need and only return the fields that we think we will need. Better to take more fields than we actually need, because you never know, maybe we need them later, and we can still make adjustments to this, but I just decided to go with these for now. So let's run this, and then ChatGPT should give us the code that we can then input in there to extract the right fields. We're just going to give it the context of JSON again for context. This is the input JSON. Okay, this seems to be the script that we can use. And so let's input that here. And then we're going to do execute step. And this then gives us ID, thread ID, message ID. So this all looks good, and this is cleaned up now. So we can rename this step to say clean up, or actually let's do it filter data. And this seems to be looking good. Okay, yeah, this looks good. So we will need the ID to just have an ID of this message. We need the thread ID to be able to keep track of threads. So when you reply to this email, that it knows it's all in one thread. The actual message ID as well, the subject line, the date, from which email this came from. So basically the brand, this will be the brand. In this case, it's me because I sent it to myself, which email it arrived to. So we will basically just make sure that whenever it is sent here, that we then filter it. Actually, yeah, it will only come to this email because we only have one integration. And then we have the body here, which is like the plain text body. So we can be using this to inject it into the AI in the next step. And then we also take the HTML body, because I suspect that it will be easier to use the HTML body later in the UI to display it, but we'll see. I just decided to get both here. Okay, the next step is actually the important one. So we're going to be adding the AI agent here, and we'll just search for an AI agent node. And you can see it's already hooked up in that it gives us the output of the previous node as the input here. And here we're going to select define below, because this is connected to chat trigger node, but we're actually going to define it below as the source for the prompt. We're just gonna input it ourselves. And I pre-wrote this prompt here, input it here. So this prompt says you're analyzing emails to extract brand collaboration data for a content creator. Task, identify whether the email is a brand collaboration request and extract key information. And then definition about what actually a brand collaboration request is, criteria for true, criteria for false, just to make sure that it filters the right information. Then I give it an output format. I'll go into that later. And then also just like some additional instructions. And then very important, the input email data. So this is the variable data that is coming from the input here. So the subject line, the from email, so the brand email, and also the body of the email. So that's like, these are the only information that the AI actually needs in this case. And then we're going to say requires specific output format. It will say connect an output parser on the canvas to specify the output. Okay, we're going to do that in a bit. We will have to add a chat model here as well. Just go with OpenAI and add the credentials here. Okay, we inputted our API key, which we got from OpenAI, and saved it here. And we don't need to save this. So let's just select a model that we will be using here. And I think we should be using, so I was testing it previously and I think 4.0 mini was doing fine. So let's do 4.0 mini. Frankly, I think any model should do okay here. You don't need to go overboard with the O3 models or like the O models, which are thinking models. You can probably just go with either the 4.0 or the 4.1. And if we go with mini, it will be slightly less intelligent. So actually, let's go with just a normal 4.0 for now, to have it a bit more intelligent, but also a bit more costly. But we can tweak that later. Okay, so we've added the chat model here, and then we need to add an output parser, structured output parser, just to make sure that the output is in the right format. And here it comes into play what I defined here. So I want the output to be like this. So it should say, is this a collab? And it should be a Boolean, true or false. And just give it this instruction here, true, if it's a collaboration request. I wanted to give us the last message as well. So the latest message in the email thread, because this will be helpful later when I actually build the reply. So build the UI for this so that I can just always show the reply, because otherwise it kind of just, if we take everything, it will just always take the entire thread. So I use AI to filter out just the latest message in the email thread. That will make it easier for us later. And then also the brand name of the brand, so that, again, that we don't need to, because right now the only information we have is the email address from the brand. And here AI can actually help us to identify based on the email address, like what brand name this actually is. So we can then use this information and display it. So we don't need to build in some AI logic later to extract the brand name. And the same with the brand website. It will also extract that from the email. So this is the output format that I want. So that means for my output parser, I will just put that format in there. So I'll just say define using JSON and replace that with this exact output format. And then let's test this. Okay, so based on the input here, it gave us the output, collab is true. And the last message was, hey, would really like to. So this is basically the only message here right now. If we are going to reply to this email, it would give us only the reply. And it wasn't able to get a brand name and a brand URL. So it left these fields empty, which is fine. Okay, now in the next step, we want to actually put an evaluation step here, which is this brand collab? And if yes, we just save it to our Supabase database. Before we add this, so this would be like an if node, basically. Before we add this if node, we want to just combine the data that comes out of here and the data that comes out of here. Because if you remember here, we actually just get the important data that we need. And then we kind of use some of that data for the AI to evaluate whether this is a brand request or not. And the output that we get here is, yes, this is brand collab request or no, and also some other information. So we want to combine all of that into one so that we can save all of it together in Supabase, right? So before we do this if step, we will just combine this data. So I will add a merge step here. And this merge step should say combine by position. So like on top of each other, and then number of inputs, and then we can define the inputs. So the first input should be coming from here, and the second input should be coming from here. And so we see the first input here. The merge step should be here, and this input should be going into the merge step. The merge step will go into the if step. So the merge step, let's execute this and see what this looks like. So this is basically just merging input 1 and input 2. And what I can see here is I have this kind of nested, like it's like an output JSON, and then these fields are nested inside of that. So I don't want that. I actually just want all of these fields to be on the same level. So it makes it easier to save. So I will just remove the nesting inside of here in an additional node here. And again, I'll just ask ChatGPT to write this for me. I want it to return a JSON without nesting. Write the code for me here. Okay, this should work. Paste it in here, execute the step. Okay, so it's giving me back these fields, it's the same field, just like not with an output and nested inside, right? And this then in turn, if I execute this step now, you'll see that everything is just on one line. So this makes it much cleaner. And the if step then is just the evaluation whether this field here is true, right? So for value 1, we can just drag in isCollab is equal to true. Okay, so we will just drag this parameter in and then select Boolean here and is true. And we can test this step. So the output is into the true branch because isCollab here is true. If it was false, it would go into the false branch. And so what we want to do next is to this true branch, we will just connect Supabase, writing to the Supabase. And in this case, we will do create a row. So this writes a new entry in Supabase. And then let's set up our credentials. So you need your host and service role secret. So what you do is, I've set up the Supabase project beforehand, but what you need to do is just go in your Supabase, just create a new project, and then you will find the keys here under project settings. You'll find your host inside of here, and then you'll find the secret role key inside of API keys and just input it into innate. Okay, I've set up my Supabase account here, and we can leave this. So create research row. We can have this as create, then table name or ID. Since we connected this, we actually get the Supabase tables. So we can see these. I've created these two tables before. So when test building this project, there's a message table. These are hosting all of the emails. And then later also a brand reports table. But now all we need is the messages table, and you can see there's some data in there already. And we can just select messages because that's where we want to write the data. And then we can say auto map input data to columns, because what I've done here is also I've just made sure that the Supabase tables has exactly these fields, because I've kind of planned these fields out before. So, and they're all named exactly the same. If there's anything off, it will fail. And so I just made sure that it actually is exactly the same naming. Okay, so and that's why I can select auto map. And once I do that and execute the step, not quite. Okay, so there it says there was a bad request, could not find message ID column. So you can see here, this is the message ID. And if I go into Supabase, the problem is that message ID, the I is actually a capital I. So let's fix that. I'm guessing it'll be the same for thread ID. Yeah, so we will have to just fix that in here. Make it a capital I for both of these and just run through these steps again. Double check if this is coming in. Yep, execute step. Okay, now let's run this again. Yep, now it worked. And we can see this email here. We can verify if it actually landed in our Supabase. Let's refresh this. There we go. So it was added here into Supabase. Cool. So what we have here now is this is a AI agent that listens to our emails, that then cleans up some data, evaluates whether this is a sponsorship request or not. And if it is a sponsorship request, then it will write an entry in our Supabase table and basically put all of the information that we need to reconstruct this message later. in our UI again. And all of this information is stored in this Supabase. And so the next step is then building the UI to fetch from this Supabase table. Okay, next up, we're going to build the UI of this project. And we're going to go here into VS Code and just open up an empty project and then open up Claude Code here. And this is with the Claude Code extension. So just make sure that you've downloaded that. And once we're here in Claude Code, we can, let's make sure I'm logged in. Yep. Okay, now we can just, let's set up Next.js and ShadCN first. Next.js is basically this framework that we're going to be using as the basis to build this. And ShadCN are like UI components that make the building of the UI easier. So let's just say, help me set up Next.js in this empty project. Well, I'm going to say no. We just want to run the create next app command in current folder. Okay, so it's just going to run this command. I could have done that in terminal too, but I just wanted to show you how you can do it with Claude Code as well if you don't know the command. And we're going to say yes and don't ask again for permission. In fact, we should have run maybe Claude with dangerously skip permissions, but it's okay. Something went wrong. Okay, well, I think it'll be easier if we just install it ourselves. So the command is next app latest, and then we just do dot to install it here in the root folder. Yeah, we need to delete this again. So it always needs to be in an empty project for some reason. TypeScript, yes, 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 yes. And by default, yes. Okay, so it's installing the Next.js base template here. And meanwhile, we can just cancel the Claude Code. Actually, we're going to do Shift Tab to go into plan mode and just ask it, what is the command for installing ShadCN? Okay, and here you can see the Next.js has been set up now. The main thing you'll have to worry about is the code files inside of the source app. And this is what we will be editing with Claude Code in a while. But let's just wait what it returns here. Okay, it says, so it wants to create this plan now because it doesn't know yet that we set up Next.js by ourselves. All I wanted to was to get the ShadCN command, which is this. And that's all we need. And we can actually just set this up ourselves. So this initializes ShadCN. Okay, and so now ShadCN is initialized and it basically, it didn't create anything yet, but once we want to add certain UI components to it, like buttons and so on, they will be more consistent and they will be in this ShadCN style, and it just makes it easier to build the front end. And Claude Code, we can skip this for now. Okay, let's come back to this later. Okay, so we have a base. We can just run this to verify it. We do npm run dev to run this right now empty application on our local host. So if we open up localhost, we will see that it's just basically like an empty Next.js application with nothing in it yet. The page that you see right now is actually this page here. So the code defined inside of this file is what you see on the screen. Okay, good. Now what we will do is we will build the front end. And what I like to do for that is, before we just type in any command into Claude Code, I like to go into CopyCoder, which is the app I've built, to kind of help with this process a bit. And what I'll do is I'll just describe the app idea here. I want to build an AI agent app that is a inbound sponsorship request manager. It should have one page, which is like an inbox, should look a bit like WhatsApp messages, and that should house all of the inbound brand requests. And then it should have another page for the reports. So these are reports that are being generated about a brand, and then a third page, which is a settings page. Okay, so we can type in this prompt and then we just hit generate web app, and what it will do is just plan out this app for us real quick, and then we can get some designs to just get like a rough idea of what the design could look like. Okay, so inbox, reports, settings, that's the pages we wanted. So now we could refine the prompts of the pages a bit more. So it says here, WhatsApp style message interface for brand request, grid layout for report cards, and 2-column layout with settings categories. That sounds good to me, and we'll generate those designs. Okay, the designs have been generated. Let's check them out. Yeah, so it created the sidebar here with inbox, report, settings, and then it has like a messaging style inbox here. And if you click on it, You get the details of the message basically. Now let's see. So it has this, I think it looks pretty cool. So it has like this accept and decline button, and it has this campaign overview, which I like. The deliverables, brand guidelines. Okay. So I like the overall style. What I would just change is kind of the information that is being displayed here. So I actually kind of just want it to be more like a messaging interface, and then it can have this overview here of, you know, like a summary of what has been talked about in the messages. It doesn't really need to accept and decline for now. It just should be basically just like an interface for the messages. So for the emails in our case, right? So let's change. So we can do that edit right here. Let's do that quickly. So I can say edit this. I don't need any brand campaign stats and accept or decline actions here. I just want a standard messaging interface to send and receive messages with the brand. And then we're going to apply this change. And meanwhile, while it's doing that, we can check out the other page. So this one does look good to me. It's just like a simple card layout with like brand reports. So that's fine to me. And then I guess we can refine this once we actually have it live in the app. And the settings page is also fine for me, although the layout seems to have broken a bit here, but we can easily fix that later in the app. So as I said, this step is kind of just for like getting an idea of the visuals and to iterate on the visuals a bit. And it made this change as I wanted. So this is how I wanted it. That's perfect. Okay. So now that we have the basic Next.js and ChatCN setup, I can actually just go here into source code and copy this. I don't need to do like a complex export and build this entire application from scratch because I have the basic template here already set up. So what I'll do is I'll go in here and let's restart this. Okay, let's start with building we can build the basic of the application first and make sure that the sidebar is set up, and also the initial page. I have the HTML design of the app that I want to build here. I want you to take the HTML code and implement it in this project using React and ShadCN components. Okay, so this part is important because we wanted it to actually use the ShadCN components. And yeah, because otherwise it would just create like vanilla React components, and we want to force it to use ShadCN. Okay, and then I pasted the HTML. Actually, I just remembered something. Make sure that when you build the sidebar, that it's in a separate component. Sometimes it makes this mistake. Okay, so it creates a to-do list, analyze the current project structure, set up ShadCN components if not already configured, create sidebar, create header. Do we have a header in here? I guess we do. Maybe we don't need it. Create conversation list, create message area. Okay, looks good. Okay, so it wants to like create this directory now to house the ShadCN components. And there's actually a better way to do that. No, you can just install the needed components with npx shadcn. I think it was shadcn add command. There we go. So it detected that we need several of UI components, the input, button, badge, and avatar components, and it's adding those components in here and just installed those. Okay, that's good. Now it's creating the sidebar components with navigation. Yes, here we go. It created the sidebar component. Now it created the header component. I'll tell it later to maybe remove the header component again if we don't need it. I'll have a look, but I have a feeling we don't need it right now. Next up, it's creating the conversation list component and then the message area component. And what you'll notice, of course, is that it will create some dummy data at first. So of course, this will not be integrated with our Supabase data yet. We're just creating the UI for now in this first step, and then we will hook it up to Supabase later. Okay, implementation is done. So let's check it out. Okay, nice. So we have the sidebar, which does not work yet. And these buttons also don't work yet. Okay, now we can actually iterate on it a bit to make it functional, right? Okay, first remove the header component. We don't need that yet. Now make the sidebar navigation actually work. We will need to create the other pages for that though. So actually, let's not do that yet. We can do that later. I want to just fix this page again a bit and just iterate on it to get it into the style that we want. Make sure that everything, just have a look on the main page. Okay, I have done a couple of iterations on the UI. So this part is largely just like telling this little fixes that you want. For example, the sidebar should be fixed when scrolling. I should be able to scroll the conversation list and message area individually. So that's the message I wrote here. The one I wrote before was the header of the conversation list needs to be contained. It is spreading all the way. So just like little tweaks in the UI, also taking screenshots and pasting it in there. And what I get now is this. So you can see it looks very similar to the earlier interface that I had to build that I showed you in the intro of this video. And so what we have here now is a sidebar, which is fixed. We only have this page for now. And then we have this, what's called a conversation list, which is, like all of the different messages, which can be scrollable. And then when you click on it, you should be able to see in the message area, you should be able to see the messages appear here. And then you have like on top, you have like this little header part, which is summarizing or has like summary information. It has these buttons to archive and create brand report. And then it has the messages, which should be showing up here. So I think at this stage, it is good enough now for us to start integrating this with Supabase so that we actually get some live data in here. Because if I continue building on the UI now, there might be too many things we have to change later in the UI. So it's good to set up the integration now, and then we can iterate on the UI a bit more. So that's kind of the steps I would take now. So let's go into our database. And okay, what we want to do is we're going to go here to database, and then you see this database, the messages database here. I will just take a screenshot of that because that seems to be the best overview information of the fields that are inside of our table right now. And then I'll go back here to Claude Code. We're going to go into the planning mode. I'll paste this and I'll say I want to now integrate my Supabase backend with my front end. You can see from the image the fields the table contains. I want you to create a comprehensive to-do list first that outlines all of the phases for integration and showing the data that's in Supabase live in our UI. Each phase should have some simple testing as well. I prefer if you tell me exactly what to test instead of writing tests. Okay, since this is in plan mode, it won't actually create any files yet, but it will create the plan now, and then it will probably suggest a file that we can then implement. Okay, so it created this plan here, and always when I want to implement something a bit bigger, I have it create a plan because that's just makes sure that the implementation is much more robust, and you just make sure you get higher quality from this. Okay, so it has phase 1, setup and configuration, set up the Supabase client. Okay, and then testing. Phase 2 is create TypeScript interface and data fetching. Yeah. Phase 3 is state management, set up React hooks and state management for messages. Okay. Phase 4, conversation list integration. Phase 5, message area integration. Phase 6, message actions, implement, archive, read, unread, and brand report. Okay, I will probably modify it to not implement that yet, since we want to implement the brand report functionality later. And that will also in itself be a bit more of a complex task because, as I said, we want to implement Perplexity API. Real-time features, add real-time updates using Supabase subscriptions. I'm not sure if we need that. I might tell it to simplify that. Or I guess we could have that. Advanced features, add collaboration detection, threading, and enhanced search. We definitely don't need collaboration detection. That seems too advanced. Or what does it say? Use isCollab field to highlight collaboration requests. Okay. Performance and polish, final testing and deployment. So I would say everything until phase 5 is fine. So let's do that. We just need it up until phase 5 for now. The rest is too advanced. Okay, so it just shortened it, and then, okay, don't start coding yet. Just create a MD file with this plan for now. No, so it's kind of simplified the plan now. No, I want the plan to be exactly what you wrote earlier in the same level of detail. Okay, I guess Yes. Okay, it created the plan here. I'll just organize it a bit nicer with a folder to do this and move it in here. Okay, Supabase integration plan. Run the AI phases 1 to 5. Sounds good. Now we can actually, I am going to just exit this instance of Claude Code now and start a new one just for better context management. Yeah. Okay, no, actually I am going to do just the compact. Just going to run the compact command, which kind of compresses the conversation we had so far. And then we can continue from there. And from there we can then start implementing the phases. Okay, then let's start implementing just phase 1 off, and then we'll tag the Supabase integration plan. Okay, it's going to install the Supabase packages. It's going to create the environment variables, so it will create this env local file here, and I will have to put in my Supabase keys in here. Okay, phase 1 is done. Installed Supabase package, created env local file. I have inputted my keys in there, and then it set up the Supabase client configuration in here, the Supabase client configuration, and created TypeScript types, which are here. So this is matching the table format that we have in Supabase, and then verified the build completes without errors, added connection test. Sounds good. We don't need to test this one further, I think. Or actually, since it's running, we can just go into the application to see what's happening now. Okay, it says internal server error. I think it's because we need to, okay, yeah, it hasn't actually set up like the required things for it to work yet. So let's just ignore this for now and push on. And then later on we can debug if something doesn't work. Okay, so let's mark everything as done in the to-do list and then continue with phase 2. Okay, let's continue with phase 3. I find phase 1 and phase 2 are not easily testable. They should be tested in the browser dev tools. So once we implement phase 3, we should be able to test it in the UI directly. Okay, update and start with phase 3. Okay, phase 3 was completed, and the way I understand it, it's set up like these hooks for custom hook for fetching message list, custom hook for single message details. So it's kind of like setting up the functions here to fetch the messages from internally. But what it hasn't done yet, and that's for phase 4, is to actually replace the hard-coded data with the live Supabase data. So that's when we actually start to see some things, because right now what's showing up here is still the hard-coded data. And so let's do that now. Okay, let's start with phase 4. Okay, phase 4 has now been completed, and we should be able to check and make sure if it's fetching correctly. So, okay, we're getting an error, failed to load messages. What we can do now is go to inspect, just go to console and have a look here. And let's just take a screenshot of the whole thing, and we'll paste it back in here and say there's an error failing to fetch the messages. Okay, so don't feel free to sometimes interrupt it, because it's saying the error is likely because the messages table doesn't exist. Just correct it, because we know the messages table does exist. The messages table does exist. The permissions are set to no RLS. So we actually in Supabase have, for simplicity's sake, we have RLS disabled. So it's not secure yet. This is just to make it easier while we're developing. And we're just going to tell it that permissions are set to no RLS. Find the issue. Okay, so now it's kind of doing the right thing. It's saying, let me add some better error logging to find out what the issue is. So this is better. Let me also add a simple test function to check if we can connect. Now, when you refresh the page, let's refresh the page. Okay, let's take a screenshot of that again. And actually we can expand this to give it some more information. This is a network course error. Okay, I managed to fix it with a bit of back and forth. So what I didn't realize was it kept trying to get the data from Supabase, but it kept saying that the Supabase URL and key are not correct. And like checking through the console logs, it was like always placeholder. And then what I realized was that is just that the env local file needs to be saved. So I actually like inputted the stuff there, but I didn't actually save the file. And so it was strange, because like normally when I work in Cursor, everything just saves automatically when you make changes. And I guess now in this code, I haven't activated that it saves automatically. So I had to just basically save the file, and then it worked. So sometimes you just get like stuck on these little issues for a bit. But yeah, now it's working. You can see here that, so right now we've only been working on this part, and this is now actual live data from our database. So, and I know this because this is the latest message that I've sent, and it got picked up here. So we can test this again. Hey, falling up here. And the thing is, like every message in this thread will get picked up. So the first place it will get picked up is here inside of the N8N, right? So we should see here in the executions here in a bit that this latest message should, yeah, there we go. So this one is picking up the latest message that is coming. And then if we go, if it's succeeded, we can go here into the database and there we go. So not yet, actually, yeah, here. Hey, following up here, that's the one I just sent and it just got inserted into the database. And now if I go back into my front end, and so I think the automatic fetching hasn't been implemented yet, but if I refresh the page, it should be there. Yeah, there we go. Hey, following up here. So what you'll see is that it doesn't match them in a thread yet. So this is actually the first message here. This is the second message, and this is the third one, which are actually all in a thread, but it's just creating separate message instances right now. So we have to fix that later. But the good news is that it is picking up the data from Supabase now. So now we can continue with the implementation, continue with phase 5. We can actually just give it some positive feedback. It worked. Continue with phase 5. Okay, phase 5 is done. And phase 5 was basically the message area integration. So previously only this part was working and now this part should be working as well. So we can verify this if we can actually see this here. If we click this, this shows up. You can see it's not perfect yet, but it's showing the data, right? It's showing the data that's supposed to be here. Okay, so it is working, and now we should just make these like little tweaks here to fix this. So in this case, what's actually happening is that it's like not really looking at the thread ID when displaying data. So there's a thread ID here, and it should be considering the thread ID to group the messages together. So let's implement this now and just make these like little UI fixes. Okay, it's working, but messages are not grouped together properly. When they have the same thread ID in Supabase, it means they are one thread. Also, I don't want you... So the other thing I noticed is that it is displaying, so on this latest message, which is this entry here, it's displaying everything. So like it's displaying not just, let's see here. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's displaying the whole body here, and the whole body contains, hey, following up here. Yeah, sounds good. And so on. Or maybe it's even displaying the HTML. I'm not sure. Could be. Either way, I kind of, and that's why I implemented this last message feature, because that makes the display much easier, because this last message property here just contains the last message. So we can just be displaying only the last message, and that'll make it much easier. That was actually something I implemented in the beginning in this project, because in my initial project where I tested this whole implementation, that was one of the things I ran into. So I figured it would be best to do it this way. So let's implement that. So let's add that. So I want you to display the message from the last message field instead. And you should be looking at the sender and receiver information to figure out who sent the message. Okay, so we're kind of putting two things in one here. Fix the thread thing, and then also fix that it should display last message instead of the whole message. So let's see if it... Okay, the thread messaging has been fixed. So we can see if we click into this, this is now one conversation here and it contains the thread, but it seems to have it's not displaying just the last message right now, because I can see from here that it's actually displaying the whole thing. So we should fix that too. Okay, the threading is fixed. But in the message area, you should be displaying only the last message field, because that field is cleaned and only contains the latest message, making it easier to display the conversation flow. The other field contains the history of the messages, but all nested within each other, like it is typically in emails. So yeah, in emails, it is typically like that. That's kind of just nested, so it's not very nice. But since we want to, like, this is a bit of a beauty feature, but since we want to make it look like it's just like a very simple messaging app in a way, so just like back and forth messages, I think it's easier to implement it this way. There might be some better way to implement this later on. Maybe I'll figure out a better way, but for now, we can just try this. Okay, so let's check it out. Yeah, See, this looks much better now. So it's only displaying the last message. The last message is being filtered out by our N8N workflow. So the AI agent within the N8N is doing this filtering. And now it's only displaying the last message. And this looks like a much better conversation flow. So to improve this, we could, it's all from the same sender now because I was sending these emails to myself as a test. But to improve this, we could have this on the left side and then put this on the right side. So that's just a small UI tweak. And yeah. So if we click through the others, we can see, okay, so all of these don't have any thread information. This one does. This was also a test. So incoming message, and then these are the reply messages. So yeah, I think at this stage, we have the front end of this page working. Like we could make some small beauty tweaks as I mentioned, like put this here. Also, what you'll notice is I kind of simplified this by just having an open in Gmail button here. So let's see if this works. Okay, it doesn't work yet, but my thinking was like I could implement the messaging functionality here, which would, it would basically use the Gmail API to send messages, which is fine. And we can do that, but an even faster way to do it for now is just have a link to the Gmail message. It will open up in a new tab and then we can type our reply there and we'll still see it here. So this is just an easier way to implement this for now. And so we have the UI step done. So if we go into our plan here, step 2 of the UI is done. And now next up, we will implement the research functionality. And so basically this button, when you click this button, it should generate a report and you should then be able to see the reports on the reports page. So let's do that next. Okay, now let's build the report generation feature. And for that, I'm going to switch back into the code here. In Claude Code, we can actually we'll just do a clear to reset everything. And what I will also do now, we could have done this earlier, but I will do an init now because this just kind of creates a file for Claude to understand the code base that you're in right now. And it'll make things a bit easier for Claude Code to work on this repository. Okay, that created this Claude MD file here, and it basically summarizes what this project is about. Okay, let's continue. So the first thing we'll want to do is actually, before we code anything here, let's go into the web and let's have a look at the Perplexity API, because as I mentioned, we want to do a deep research on a brand, and there is a API by Perplexity that does this really well. And we can go here to the overview. I had a look at it earlier. So there are a couple of different models that they have: Sonar, lightweight, cost-effective search model, and then this is like the reasoning model, and then there's this deep research model, which is the one that we want. And so if you just look into it, okay, here's some like response examples. If we go and open up the API reference here, this should give us all of the information that we need. So basically there are a couple of different endpoints. There's this generates models response for the given chat conversation, chat completions endpoint. So this is, I guess, it's like the normal post endpoint. And this one creates an asynchronous chat completion job. Okay, I'm not sure. I'll let AI decide later which one to pick. I guess this one will be fine. Okay, and these endpoints are just to like check which operations are currently running, which async operations are currently running, I guess. And if we look at some of the properties in here, authorization, obviously, then there's this like model property. So you can pick your model here. We'll do the deep research one. And then you put your messages in here is where the prompt goes. You can pick your search mode, and then there is academic or web. So when set to academic, results will prioritize scholarly sources. So we will go for web. Reasoning effort, we can like pick low, medium, high, and a couple of other things. I think one thing that's important is this search domain filter needs to be empty, because this basically says list the domains that you want to search in, and we will want to do like a general internet search about a brand. So we don't want to put anything in here and keep this empty. And we won't need streaming. I think the rest we will kind of let AI decide, or let Claude Code decide how to construct this, but we will give it a bit of guidance, of course. Okay, so we have an understanding of the Perplexity API. So let's go back into our Claude Code instance here, and then we can start planning this. I want to build the next feature, which is the creation of the brand reports. The way it works is I should be able to click the generate report button for a brand, which is in the message area header. If you remember, that was this part here, and then it will trigger Perplexity API request. We'll say Sonar deep research to do some research about this brand and return it as a report on the reports page. The reports page should have a simple card layout. And if you click on the cards, the detailed report opens up. Okay, did we miss anything? Oh yeah, we need to tell it to actually generate the plan first. Let's see if we missed anything here, and then we can specify this later. We can also, let's just go into plan mode just to make sure it doesn't start coding. Generate a plan first inside of to do. That lets us implement this whole thing. Okay, let's do it. We will need to, I forgot that, we will need to give it Perplexity API docs links so that it can actually go and check and, you know, construct the endpoint in the right way. Okay, it came back with a suggestion here. It says phase one is the database schema and types. So actually, since I had already created this database previously and I kind of just want to reuse it, not this one. So this is the table that I created previously during my tests, and I will want to reuse this. So I will actually just tell it, modify this plan to use the table that we already have. And let's see, Perplexity API integration. Yeah, we will need to pass in the docs for it to be more precise here. Reports API layer, that sounds fine. State management, okay. Navigation and routing, reports page UI, message area integration, yeah. Report generation workflow, implement background job system for report system, yeah, okay. So it will show like states pending, generating, failed, and so on. Okay, other than that, it sounds good. So let's just make these small changes. So for phase one, I actually already created a database table in Supabase for this. So I want you to use that, to use and match that. Let's get that information. Okay, we're gonna go to database, tables, and brand reports here, and then we can take a screenshot. That should do fine. Or can we copy and paste this? Let's take a screenshot, should be okay. Let's see, screenshot. Also for phase two, here is the Perplexity API docs for reference. Make sure you see it and put the detailed API call details in the plan. And then let me get the link, and then I'll say I want to use Sonar Deep Research as model, search mode web, and what else did we say? We can do, let's do reasoning mode low to test, and we want, we could do a max tokens as well. Oh yeah, search domain filter should be empty. And okay, also make sure that every phase is being tested. Add testing into the plan, ideally testing by me, the user, not automated. Okay, it made the adjustments, added the testing, changed phase one and phase two to add more details. This looks good. Yeah, I think yes, and auto accept edits. It didn't actually write a to-do list. So sometimes it like just creates it, and then like I need to tell it to actually create the file. So it didn't create a file now, so we need to just direct it. Create the to-do list file exactly like you planned above, inside of to list first, because if we don't do this, then it might get lost, you know, in the context. So we want to make sure that the file is existing so that we can really go through the phases one by one. Okay, I'll just verify again if everything is right, and yeah, it does look right. It's structured with 9 phases, each containing, yeah, probably 8 and 9 are like kind of a bit overkill, but we'll see as we go. Okay, let's start with phase one. Okay, the first thing it did here was to create or tell me to add the Perplexity API key in my env local. So I will go and do that. And I did create, so if you go here to quick start and then you can get your API key here. Okay, I've inputted my API key in the env local file and made sure to save it this time. Very important. And then I can continue here. Okay, so phase one was just about putting in the variable, I guess. User testing, verify TypeScript types compile without error, check environment variable is loaded in browser console. Okay, actually the tests were already done here as it seems. So I can just say, okay, then, okay, doesn't matter. I'll just say mark phase one as done, move on to phase two, and I'll just tell it like always mark things as done after you've completed and ask me before moving to the next phase. So phase 2 is going to be the Perplexity API integration. And yeah, it's using the completions endpoint model, deep research, web, mode, reasoning effort low for testing, and search domain filter empty. So the API call structure looks roughly correct. And it says you are a brand research analyst, provide comprehensive brand analysis. So the prompt is here still quite simple, as you can see. We'll just answer it here. Should I proceed with phase 2? Yes. The prompt is relatively simple. Research and analyze brand name, include company overview, and like strengths, weakness, and so on. So we could optimize that later to get better results back. Actually, we do need to think about this a bit now, because depending on the report that we get back, we need to parse that data to display it, right? So we need to make sure that actually what we get back is somehow in a specific JSON format, or like a specific format, so that we can display it properly. So we might want to add this part. I forgot about this. So let's see what it does here. Let's wait for it to finish. Okay, so we can test it first. It says open a browser console, add this, test the API call. Okay, I asked it now how I can test this, because I wasn't sure exactly like what it means to just test the API call manually in the browser dev console, or how to do it. And then it does say you need to call it through a component or create a test button. So that's kind of how I'm used to doing it. I don't know if there's a different, easier method, but I'll just tell it to do that then quickly, and then we can test it quickly. Yes, implement that so I can test it lightweight. Okay, so it will add a temporary test button to the message area component. So I do think it's important to test this part, because if we continue building and then this part doesn't work, and this part is like calling the Perplexity API, then we're going to have to do a bunch of debugging later to find out what exactly was not working. So it's better to debug this now and just make sure that the API connection is working. So we can now go, it says look for the test API button. Click the test, watch for button changes testing, and then check the browser console. So it should be here. Yeah, test API. Let's go to testing. Okay, test failed. So good that we did it now. Let's see what it actually gave back. Go to console here and let's screenshot that. It says test failed. Okay, access to fetch add from origin has been blocked by course policy. The Perplexity API doesn't allow direct browser requests from, okay, to create a Next.js API route, which I guess is what it wants to do here. Is that the case? In phase 3, reports database API layer. Yeah, I think it's actually what it wanted to implement here. Okay, well, it went ahead and did that. So what did it implement now? It implemented the API, it implemented something here. The route, the API, Perplexity route.ts file. So it should be handled inside of here now. So we'll just need to make sure that when it implements phase 3, that it doesn't write like duplicated stuff. And now let's test it. Still failed. Okay, it responded with status 401 unauthorized here. Please check your invalid API key. Okay, so let me check that, because I used an old one. Maybe I just need to, okay, I have replaced the API key with a new one. Then I press test again, and now it seems to be working because it's still running. And usually these like deep research reports run for a while. At least it's not failing immediately. So I kind of know something seems to be different this time. And I'm guessing once it actually comes back, damn it, what happened here? Okay, and now it returned something. So the API test was successful, and we can see, okay, it inserted a dummy brand, Apple Inc., and then it gave me the report back here, which looks good. Okay, so the API test worked. That's good. And now, as I mentioned earlier, we can actually modify the API call a bit so that it can return and like adjust the prompt a bit so that it returns exactly the format that we will need later to show the reports. Okay, it worked. I want to modify the API call prompt a bit to make sure that the reports come back in the intended format later so that we can display them properly. I basically want the report to contain some general information about the brand, and then a more detailed section, and then a section with links to example content. Because remember, the brand report is for a creator to evaluate whether the brand would be a good fit in terms of sponsoring partnerships. Make according adjustments to the plan. I'll tag the plan and API. So actually one thing I remembered, and that we should just make sure now after I have checked the updated prompt here. So it kind of improved the prompt here, but I think what is still missing is, and I remember that in the API, they have this field called response format. So it basically enables structured JSON output formatting. And so we should really utilize that, and I'll let that know here. In the Perplexity API, there is a response format, to call like that, yeah, field. I want us to utilize that so that we get an exact format back and make sure there are no parsing problems later in the UI. Okay, so it is going to the Perplexity doc again to just verify that. Okay, so it created the JSON response format, but I just want it to be a bit simpler. This seems like there are too many fields. Okay, that's fine, but make the response format a bit simpler. Looks too complex now. I just feel like if it's too complex, there are just too many variables there where things can go wrong. So let's just keep it simple. And so it's simplifying too much now. I meant to keep it simple within the bounds of the structure I described earlier. Yeah. Keep the 3 main sections, but just simple within it. Okay. Partnership analysis. Okay. Well, let's add in brand overview. There should be some information about the funding, and in the detail analysis, I want to mostly have some information about what their product does. The content examples section should just be an array of links. So I do have to be quite specific here, otherwise it's just doing what it wants. Okay, so now let's run the test again. Okay, now it turned it into a bad request. So let us screenshot this. Actually, we are going better to, can we copy paste this? No. Okay, add request now. Okay, it says the problem is with the response format. So let's check in the API docs again. It does have this. So it's just an object. What does it mean? Okay, so apparently I was able to fix it by saying that it's not a JSON object, but a JSON schema. So also wasn't quite sure what exactly the difference was, but basically the object just is like giving it directly as an object, and the schema is like giving it the blueprint. And so that seemed to work. And now I tested it again, and it returned this part here. So I should make sure, so I can actually, yeah. Nice, I can mark the whole thing and probably copy paste it. That's good, because I want to actually input that so that it can know the exact response and make sure that when we parse it later, as you can see, there's like this think part, and I'm not sure if you can remove it from the response, maybe, but it seems to kind of return this think part. And then there's this brand overview part, which is the data that we requested. So let me just give it that and say, okay, it worked. Attached, you will find its response. Make sure that the plan is adjusted accordingly so everything goes smooth later when we implement the UI phase. Wait a minute, I think, yeah, I didn't actually copy this. Let me try this again. Here you go. Okay, now it's updating the plan. Okay, proceed. Also, we should make sure to not duplicate anything. Since we did the testing earlier, you can use that. I just want to prevent it to write 2 API routes. Okay, so this phase 3 is basically to communicate with Supabase, right? To get and post the reports and so on. And again, we have a bit of a problem with the testing now because we need to like get it to write some tests. So I actually for next time, I think it's really much better to just implement the front end and then like build the backend parts onto it, because then you have it's easier for you to test. This way you kind of have to always just hope that it's working or like write additional testing pages. So in this case, let's ask it, can you write something lightweight for us to test this? Okay, it wrote the test for us, and now we can go into the front end and click test DB. It added this new button here. Okay, and it says database test failed. Let's have a look at the console here. We'll take that, put it here, test failed. Okay, so with copy and pasting a bit, it seemed to have fixed the issue. So it was just a mismatch in some of the fields, which can happen because this database was created beforehand, and it's kind of, sometimes it like doesn't match exactly. This problem will usually not happen if you haven't created a database table yet and basically tell the AI to give you SQL code to create the table, because then it kind of originates from the original logic. So yeah, this can happen sometimes. But if we test DB now, we can see it says DB tests completed, and it should have created a new input if it refreshes here. Okay, so it likely, it created this second one here down here. Simple test brand, good. So we can actually delete those again. Okay, now let's go back and have a look at what we have now in our plan. So this was phase 3. And if we look at phase 4, 5, so 4 is like the React hooks and state management for like basically calling the reports and calling Perplexity and so on. And so not the actual API calls, but like the hooks within the application. Then phase 5 is navigation and page routing, reports, page, UI components. So it seems to be all UI from now on, which should make things a lot easier. And then message area integration, which is also UI. So what I'll do is now, since like setting up APIs and like database is usually the most complex stuff. And once that's done, the UI thing is usually pretty easy for the AI to do. So I think we can just do it a bit faster here and just say implement everything until phase 7. Okay, it works. Now continue with the plan and implement everything up until and including phase 7, because it now seems to be all UI stuff mostly. Okay, so it has implemented everything up until phase 8 actually now. And so we should go and test it. And I'm sure there will be a couple of issues, because it always happens when you implement more things at once, then there will always be a few issues. So let's open up our developer tools here. We'll click on console, and then you can see that this create brand report button should now work. It says generating. Okay, and there we go. There's an error. So let's start debugging this. It seems to be an error here when doing a patch to the Supabase table. So this is probably when updating the Supabase table. So let's paste that in. Clicking. Okay, I've managed to fix the issues now. So first there was something with the database status updating that went wrong, and then there was some problem with the parsing. So one problem that I actually also saw in my initial test was that the Perplexity API returns the report always with the thinking tag, and so the parsing kind of naturally assumes that there's no thinking section, and so it kind of fails in the parsing. But then when that was fixed, it actually all worked, and now we can actually test this. So if we just go to this brand here, I know this formatting here is not perfect yet, but I just take this message because the brand here is there. It exists. There is a brand. So if we click create brand report, it'll take this brand and then send it to the API. So in this case, Spark Loop, we can do create brand report. It will start generating, and we can see here from the logs, it's even checking for existing reports of this brand. So that's like an additional logic that the AI just implemented. It was part of the plan, I guess. And then starting brand research, sending it to the Perplexity API. So that's all working. And now we just have to wait. Okay, as we can see, it came back successfully. We still have to improve this, obviously. This is not great UI yet, but we can see report completed. If we press OK, it reroutes us to the brand reports page. And here we can now also see, we can close this. We can see these were all like the test ones I was creating, and that failed. And this one actually completed. So we can click into it, and then we can also see the brand report here. So this is awesome. We even have a regenerate here. So this pretty much completes our flow, because we have the messages. Again, we can optimize how they're being displayed here, like it's cut off a bit. We can optimize how the brand is being fetched. In this case, since I was just sending myself some test requests, there's no brand. So that's going to be a problem when I click create brand report. I got to remove these two buttons here. Now if I actually pick a brand, so let's take passion fruit and then click create brand report, we are going to get a report on this brand. Okay, so the report came back, and I actually realized it's here, it kind of identified Tonic AI as the brand, which I think is not quite right in the original AI agent, which is doing the parsing of the brand. So we have to fix that, but the report was created off Tonic AI. So this part definitely works. So yeah, we can have a look at the entire workflow now. So we implemented, as a summary, the AI agent part. So that's parsing and not parsing, but like looking through emails that are coming into my inbox and filtering the sponsorship requests. We set that up with N8N. And then we build out all of the UI. So this part, the messaging and all of the buttons and the reports page and so on. And then in the last part, we've set up the Perplexity API integration to generate the actual brand reports. Now, there are, of course, still a lot of other things that can be added here. I think it is already quite useful. So I have a filtering of my brand reports here that I can check into, so that at least they're kind of separated from my inbox. So there's a filtering going on, and I can quickly generate reports on them. So as a creator, this tool is already quite useful. There are things that we can improve, right? So I put some of them down here. Obviously, like some of the things I mentioned just now with like some of the UI fixes and just making the overall flow a bit better. That'll probably take 1 or 2 hours to just like go through them, iterate them, and fix them. And then I think there are a couple of cool features that we can add here too. So we can implement the actual reply feature here, so that I can use this as a messaging app and doesn't need to reroute me to Gmail to reply. So that's one kind of. And then also just add some templates into the reply. So often when I get a request from a brand and I've done a research on them and I want to proceed, then I'll send them my media kit and say, hey, check out my rates. Do you want to proceed? And so there are like several like templated replies that we can let the user define, so that you can send out these templated replies easily to the brands. Later on, maybe you could even turn this into a fully autonomous agent that does like this initial communication for you, the replies for you automatically, of course, depending on how you've customized it and how much autonomy you actually want to give it. So that's where the settings page would come into play. You can define very much how autonomous the AI agent should be. And then I think one of the big things is also, like, we've only implemented this for Gmail right now, but you might want to have it linked up with multiple Gmail inboxes, or even with like your social media platforms, right? With X and IG. And this will be slightly limited by which of these platforms actually have an open AI that allow you to tap into this data. So I know, for example, that TikTok does not. Yeah, once you actually enable all of these integrations, this will be really useful. And then I think finally, this whole thing can actually just also turn into, if you open up a platform for brands to just go there as the starting point to reach out to creators, that could be a really nice marketplace as well. So lots of different directions that this product can be taken to, but it was nice to see that in this short time, we can at least, spin up like an initial MVP version. Okay, and if you want to learn more about building software with AI, I've started this community where we have calls weekly. I have there are a bunch of courses in there for beginners to learn how to get started with this stuff. So I've tried to condense everything I know and put that into these courses. I'm also thinking about, since I will be building more of these things and I cannot follow through with each of these projects, to kind of just put them into my community as like, this, for example, the MVP version, I'll put the code into the community, and then whoever is inside the community and wants to take this project to the next level can use that and get started with that and basically work on this project. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking about. Let me know if you'd like that. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.